Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talk About It Tuesday. I'm super excited that you're here. I'm here talking to Nicole Cohen about Rebel Magic. She's a dear friend of mine, an amazing coach, a beautiful human being, and definitely a healer. So I'm glad that you're joining, whether live or after the fact, because today is sure to be a treat. I've been on my own journey also of rebel magic, and here she is. Let me pull her on. Perfect. Yeah, so we're just there she is, Nicole Cohen,
Excellent.
live and in the flesh. Hello, my
Hey,
friend.
how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for doing this, for being on the show.
Thank you
Uh,
for inviting me.
and I was just saying that you're a dear friend, a dear colleague, a beautiful human being, a wonderful coach, mentor, healer for sure. And
Wow.
yeah,
How
I'm
can I
just
live up to that?
and you're getting love here from Manda. I hope I'm not saying that wrong,
Amanda.
but yeah, yes, her
Hey,
hand.
man.
um, yeah, and I'm excited about this topic for several reasons because we're doing something together, which I know we'll talk about on this chat, and also because of the moment in time that we're in, where I think we all just need as much magic as we can pull out of a hat. And so I guess before diving in, Nicole, I'd love for you to share whatever you want about yourself to the audience as they get to know who you are and what you're all about.
Well, I have to admit, as you know, I hate talking about myself. I'm much happier talking about something specific. Um, but I suppose my little story in a nutshell, I did the corporate scene for a while. I worked corporate side. I ran my own business after that, helping women set up their own businesses, using both marketing, my background skills, and moving more fully into coaching. And alongside all of that, I started training myself in arts therapy, well, going to training in arts therapy and coaching and neurolinguistic programming and all these other things, and started sort of developing my own ways of working with women. Because what I found most, that what gets in the way, in my experience, of women running successful businesses is very rarely the actual skills and knowledge. It is more about our own lack of confidence, lack of belief in ourselves. It is all the ways that we get in our own way. Um, and I found that heartbreaking because I was working with amazing women. So I suppose that sort of set me on the path of, how do we develop those ideas and how do we break them? How do we change them? How do we believe in our own magic? How do we start believing in our own power and potential? And through a very wiggly and roundabout route, that is where I have ended up. I dropped most of the marketing and I just focus on really helping women to express more of who they are more comfortably and more confidently and more courageously.
Yes, and you're yeah, what a beautiful introduction, and certainly you have been such a huge help to me as I navigate this world. I mean, we both have these corporate backgrounds, and I just think it's, how we met was like such divine timing and divine intervention for sure. Uh, the quick story there is we met at a Mama Gina women's event, and we just kind of were both loitering outside during lunch, and we just were like, so you got plans? Nope. So we were meant to find each other, which I think I wanted to share that because I think that is part of magic, right? To me, that was magic.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
that our energy found each other in that event where there was hundreds of people,
Yeah,
and we both, came alone and found each other.
yeah, and that was really, really special.
Yes. So on that note, like, the topic today is rebel magic, and I imagine people who join might be like, what does that mean?
Mhm.
So I'd love to just get your take on what the hell are we going to talk about today with rebel magic?
Okay. Well, first of all, as you say that, actually, the first thing that springs to mind for me is it means whatever you want it to mean, because that is the beauty of it. And that's what's so important, us defining for ourselves who we are, and how we choose to be in the world.
Hmm.
But I think for me, I think about um, this, how important I think it is to believe in magic, even as adults, and particularly in our own magic, in our own power and potential. And to me, that somehow is an act of rebellion, to believe in magic as an adult, to believe in ourselves. And I find that heartbreaking, that that is the case. Um, and I think for me, the rebellion is, particularly as women, but for many, many people, us learning how to fight for ourselves, for our
Hmm.
right to believe in magic, for our right to stand up for ourselves and each other, to be who we are and however we want to be in the world, not to confine to a corporate model, or this is the way you have to be successful, or this is what defines your value, your expertise, your success as a person, as an individual, as a woman. But to make it all up as we go along, to break the rules, to write our own rule book, to change the way that we do things and do it our own way. And quite honestly, that takes time, I think, to work out what our own way is often,
Hmm.
because we spend a lifetime sort of learning how to conform, learning how to fit in, learning how to be acceptable and do things the right way. And actually, we have to shatter all of that and learn to just be who we already are, with all our magic and power and potential inside of us. That to
Yes.
me is what rebel magic is about. Be who you are in its
Oh my
simplest form.
gosh. Yeah, I'm like over here, like I'm like jumping up and down and it's like yes, that's it, like that's it. It's like it's well, first of all, having gone through my own process of deconditioning, kind of what which is how kind of interpret what you're saying about what we have to unlearn and then learn, um,
Mm,
as living in this world today. Um, and I think that, as a coach, right? You're a coach too, but like that it's all about helping people to define things for themselves. Like you started
mm,
off the explanation with like, well, it is what you make it to be. And I'm like, fuck yeah, like right, that's what we're talking about. Like, what does it mean to you? What resonates? And taking action from that place versus what somebody else tells you that it should mean or what have you.
yeah. I feel like I spent half my life walking through the world trying to follow the rules,
Mm.
and then realizing that I didn't really even understand exactly what the rules were, and half the rules contradict each other and conflict with each other, and I don't really get them. I've never really got the rules. So it took me a
Mm.
long time to work out that it was okay to say, it doesn't matter, they're not my rules anyway. But actually, then there is a process of learning to trust yourself.
Mm.
Because I think it's not even the deconditioning so much as, we are almost taught not to trust in our own knowing, in things like intuition, and we call it following your heart. And, all those sort of ideas seem so airy fairy. And so, well, what does that even mean? And how do I do that? And actually, we spend years teaching ourselves to cut
Mm.
ourselves off from our inner knowing.
Mm.
So that is the bit we have to rebuild, is learning how to trust ourselves again, and trust that we do have the answers, even if sometimes it takes us a while to find them. And it's okay to experiment, to explore, to work it out, to get it wrong, to try new things, to not have all the answers, to just live and learn as we go.
Yeah. As you're talking, it makes me, think of, and again, the reason why I love having you on this show, if I can call it that, I just get a giggle out of that, um, is that because I know that you have been through it, been through the darkness, to find the light, to find what you're talking about in terms of your truth. Um, and and I know that one of the tools in your toolbox for that journey is goddess mythology and goddess archetypes,
Mm.
and which, when I first met you was just like, what is this? Like, honestly, and actually when I think about like my education, right? Like, I wasn't even exposed to like, the female characters in my history, our country's history, whatever, the world history. And and there are people I still hear about that I'm like, oh, like, who is she? Um, so I'd love to. So I say that to say, like, I didn't know how to harness or understand these these kinds of places to find inspiration and storytelling in order to help me write the story I want to write for my life.
Mm.
Um,
One of the things that I loved, what drew me to the goddess myths, I think for me, the way I see it is a lot of the fairy tales that we grow up on, and all our happy ever after promises, um, they are often saccharine sweet versions
mm,
of life. And they often have disempowered versions of women or girls in them. But the more that I started exploring different goddess myths from different cultures and different times across the world, across history, um, there are so many common themes, there are so many universal truths, there are so many archetypes we relate to, and actually often they are very parallel to the fairy tales,
mm.
but they are the more empowered versions
Right.
of
They're like a
those
truer
women.
version of the
Yeah, they
stories.
sort of
Yeah.
they have that they the fairy tales still have the seed of them, but not the depths and not the richness. And in many of the goddess stories, those goddesses were not perfect creatures. They weren't these sort of divine, they've got all the answers, they got it all right. They were extreme versions of humanity in a way. If it was if they were jealous, they were extremely jealous and destroyed things through their jealousy. And, there wasn't this sort of right or wrong, or this is your blueprint for how to be the perfect woman. There were just this myriad of different goddesses who embodied different aspects of the feminine, who were as diverse and multi-layered as women. There was no one perfect way to be a divine woman. And I think for me, that is the beauty and the rich, because, and that lives within us, I think, as women. We are not one thing. We cannot define ourselves by one aspect of ourselves. But often we make ourselves smaller to fit in the kind of neat, appropriate boxes. And I just love that opening of the richness that goddess myths offer us, new ways of seeing ourselves, new ways of, outside of our own day-to-day experiences. So it's not our stories, it's not a day-to-day story, it's not necessarily a story you literally relate to. So you can take whatever you need from it.
Yeah.
I love about it. Yeah.
And Shige waves and says hello to us beauty, she calls us. But it actually, as she's joining and as you're talking, it makes me think about, like, right, we both come from like, actually, the three of us now, we come from this corporate, kind of mold. And so we're, oh, like, I think I'll speak for myself, like, right. So there's this strong rational side of me. And so like when you talk about goddesses, right, I'm like, well, where does this come from? Like, what, like, where's the, is it faith in these stories? Is it truth? Is it like where do these come from, and I guess uh that's part of just, I don't know, for my journey, as you walk me through your calling in the magic program, which I'd love for you to share what that is, that people can be a part of and experience healing and growth through this avenue. But what I was going to say was that it's like this, it's like this whole other way of seeing the world through a lens of uh, through just a really unique lens to me, in
I think it's the
experiencing.
lens of magic. I think, like
Mm,
you said, we all, to some extent, see the world rationally because, kind of collectively in our world at this time, society-wise, that's how we are trained to
right.
think. Rationality is our god, so to speak. We have developed a lot of suspicion around intuition and traditionally feminine values. And to me, part of the power of goddess myths is simply reconnecting with the part of ourselves that trusts, that follows our intuition, that recognizes we have a deeper knowing, sort of beyond our linear mind, beyond our rationality, um, beyond logic and explanation, and even beyond understanding sometimes, but we have a knowing that we have often forgotten how to tap into. Um, and I think the fact that it is done through storytelling, um, for me, is the part that bypasses that rationality, that gets straight to the
Mm,
spirit of things. Literally, it taps into something inside that you just resonate with. To me, it is the kind of the polar opposite to, here is a 7 steps process. This is how you become the perfect person. This is how you tap into your intuition. Follow steps 1, 2, or 3. That is all talking to the rational mind. Um, and that doesn't tell the whole story. It doesn't encompass everything. When you are telling goddess myths, goddess stories, it talks to the rational mind. It keeps the mind busy because it gives it something to think about, a story to engage with. And it gives you a deeper truth, a kind of
mm,
intuitive knowing that you can connect with. And it's also completely personal. There is no 7 step process. It's, here's a story. You might take one thing out of it. I might take something completely different out of it. We will all take what we need. And actually, I find that with a lot of goddess myths, when I revisit different myths at different times in my life, I connect with different parts of the story, or there will be parts of the
mm,
story or the character that I just didn't notice before, and it suddenly becomes the most important thing to me in that minute. Because stories are richer, and
mm.
it's how we connect as humans. We connect through sharing our stories. Um, and it is interesting though, because when you talk about rational, it's partly why I use archetypes as well as myths, because for me, the starting point, I can also be resistant to anything that is to do with spirituality. That is a huge, big, whole scary area. That kind of like, yeah, well, that's all very well and good, but what's the point of that? What's the value of that? How
Mm,
does that fit into a practical life, so to speak? Um, and for me, the archetypes, there is lots of psychological, rational explanation for how archetypes work, for Jung's collective unconscious, for, we have this pit of collective memories that we can tap into, literally on a sort of DNA level, on a psychological level, and on a spiritual level, I think. So you
mm,
can engage with it on whichever way works for you, if you know what I mean. You can make it as rational as it needs to be. But to me, it is about calling in that magic within us, and using goddess archetypes helps us to step out of our kind of limited, linear, narrow vision of the world, version of ourselves, and open up to the expansiveness of possibility to see options beyond our personal experience. That's what it's all about.
Oh my God, I love that. And speaking of goddess, I'm so glad Rosanna just joined, who was the most amazing chef in Italy when I visited for my birthday last year. And so she does cooking classes, and I think of you know, like when I think of her, like when I think of you, I think of, magical goddess that is just taking in life in the moment. That is like, when she would go out into the garden and like grab the herbs, and it was just, in a way, like making potions, right? And right, like cooking, right? It's like, what are you creating that we can experience? Even it just makes me think of like, we can think of magic in a million different ways, and somebody might think of unicorns, right? Like, and how else can we think about magic in a way that we can really tap into? Because like you're saying, like there is so much power in that. And actually it makes me wonder, which goddess do you resonates with you like the most, or in this moment even, like what?
Oh,
There's so many. I know you have
I
so
have
many
so
great
many
ones.
goddesses. I love that, and that's the point in a way, is that, there is always a goddess that resonates with whatever energy you're in at that moment, with whatever you're going through in your life. But I think one of the most important goddesses to me, sort of on my journey, especially when I went into depression and anxiety and I was struggling with life, it was a book about this goddess, Journeys to the Dark Goddess, and it was these stories that sort of helped me find my own way through. And it's two Sumerian goddesses, sister goddesses, Inanna and Ereshkigal. And they are the sisters of light and dark, and Inanna is, the queen of the world of light, and she's got it all going on. She's a proper grown-up goddess. She's queen, she rules her queendom, she's married, she's got kids, tick, tick, tick. She's got all the material successes, achievements, powers, that we believe we should have. And yet she decides to make a journey into the underworld to visit her sister, Ereshkigal. And it's a dark and it's a dangerous journey, and people don't survive and people don't come back. And everyone tells her not to. And everyone's like, you've got everything you could possibly want. Why would you go there? And there's many different explanations as to why she might have chosen. But either way, the point being, she goes into the underworld and she passes through 7 different gates. And at each gate, she must sacrifice that which is most important to her. And it is all the external symbols of her power out in the world, her material powers. And by the time she gets to the gates of the underworld, the sanctuary of the Dark Goddess, she is stripped bare. She is naked, she is broken, she is speechless, she has no power or clothes or anything from the outside world. She is just her bare self, the core of herself. And having reached her sister, the Dark Goddess Ereshkigal, Ereshkigal actually kills her with the eye of death and hand of death. She kills her and hangs her on a meat hook. It's kind of, at the end of the day, without all her powers and stuff, she is just a piece of meat. Our bodies are just flesh, so to speak. Anyway, there's a whole big story about how she gets brought back to life. But eventually she does, and she returns up through the gates back to the world. But while she is dead, her sister goes into labor. And as soon as she is reborn, the labor stops, apparently without the birth of a child per se. But it is very much about these cycles of life and death, and the balance of light and dark. It is about she must sort of give up everything that she thinks she is to find the truth of who she is. And once she returns to the world, she is the queen of light again, but she is touched by darkness. And similarly, she has left the mark of light on the goddess of darkness. And to me, I mean, there's such powerful, it's actually really hard to just explain it.
Oh my
But there is
God, you
so much
explained
power
it
in
so well.
them.
Holy shit.
You know, it is, to me, that is, you know, where we are at personally and collectively in the world is we have too much focus on light. You know, everything has to be positive, happy, put a positive spin on it. You know, everything's got to be light and fluffy, like you say, the unicorn style of magic, you know, wave your magic wand and everything is just wonderful. And then you look around and see all the darkness and the ugliness and everything that is wrong with the world. And it sometimes, to me, feels impossible to hold both of those. And for me, that was a way of finding my way to reclaim both the darkness and the light inside myself, and also to work out that for me, I feel like, you know, that is the fundamental problem of the world. And hopefully the way that we are going is reclaiming the darkness that isn't only the scary stuff, or isn't what we, you know, again, in our modern fairy tales and version of the world, dark is bad, light is good. But in the old school thinking, that was not the case. Dark was just dark, like night, winter, you know, part of the cycles of life. Light was light, dark was dark, neither were better or worse, neither were good nor bad. We have to have the balance of light and dark, and spirit and matter. And to me, that's what calling in the magic is about. It's about reclaiming the sacredness, you know, of ourselves and of life. And also being physical women in the world, you know, enjoying taste and touch and all our beautiful magical senses, you know, your chef friend, you know, spices and herbs and good food, you know, that is magic, the magic of real life. Yes, so I've forgotten what the question was, but I went off on so many tangents there. But, you know, that to me is the magic, holding the sacred, honoring the sacred within ourselves and each other, and also just celebrating life, you know, living life, enjoying our sensual bodies and all our sensual experiences. And if we can hold a bit of both, I think we've got it sorted.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you know, and Rosana says very honest and powerful. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah, how you react. And hi, Alex. It's so good to see you here. You know, Alex is an amazing painter. And when I think about like even his imagery, and I'm just connecting that to what you're saying about, he just uses these very serene, like the gray. He like it's like I think of your paintings, Alex, and I think of like it's this the beauty within the gray and the fog, and the clouds,
Shades
you know.
between.
What?
The shades between. I
The
mean, grey is the
shades
ultimate, you know,
between.
the dark and the light, you know, and
Yes.
we can see shadows, or we can see nothing, or we can see everything. It's, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the power of yeah, holding the light and the dark and also being comfortable with the gray in between where we're not sure how to hold it or see it, which I think is so much, like you said earlier, part of the collective.
Yeah, and
Um,
so much, I think there is so much power in that statement. It is being okay with the not knowing. You
mm,
know, to me, again, we are in a time and place where kind of we put so much focus on having to know the answers, on having to know what is right or wrong, on having to define and label everything, that we have lost the power of mystery, the unknown places, and we have lost our own ability to go, I simply do not know, and that's okay. That's the exploration. That's the life journey, not knowing. And that is the magic and mystery, you know. And again, darkness can be scary and, you know, terrible and awful, or it can be peaceful and beautiful and powerful and mysterious and magical. It's all about perspective.
well, and
I'm very excited to see the grey paintings,
oh my
Alex.
gosh, oh my gosh, and his father is a painter too, and they're both just like stunning, very different work, but very beautiful bodies of work.
And actually,
And
just to add to that, I mean, to me, the creative process is the
mm,
perfect example of, it's not just dark and light, but it's also action and inaction,
mm,
which is something for me I'm
mm,
exploring deeply in my working life at the moment. I did the corporate life, I did the old scale school way of working, which was all action, 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 doing, busy, busy, never enough. You've always got to be rushing, rushing, rushing. It's all about actions and achievements. And then I burnt out and I stalled and I stopped
mm.
doing anything for a while. And now I am moving back into action. But to me, it is about finding those places of action and inaction. And in the creative process, you have to have space. It isn't always about doing. It isn't always about the linear problem solving. It is often about allowing space
Mm.
for the bigger picture connections to come out, for our inner knowing to come out, for that magic to happen. And I think the creative process is not just specifically in art. It is in painting, it is in cooking, it is in how we problem solve, it is in how we innovate in businesses, in our own lives. It is everything is creative. Um,
I mean,
yeah.
I'm like now I'm like, oh my God, wait, when are we going to do an art therapy session? Because I'm like, I know this is something that you have experience and education in, and um, it just makes me think of how like that. I think that not just for myself, but I think what I also hear, right, and see in the clients and what's going on is that like this this fear of imperfection holds us
Mm,
back from
yeah.
doing things. Like I'm afraid, like if I go and just throw some acrylics on on a canvas, that I'm not going to like it, and then I'm not going to like myself or something. I'll be like, it's like an excuse to be hard on ourselves.
Yeah. That's exactly, I remember kind of one of the biggest, hugest aha moments when I started doing that arts therapy training. They talked about art as self-expression rather than creation, an act of self-expression rather than an act of creation. So in that context, in the therapeutic context, it is literally irrelevant what you create at the end. It doesn't
Right.
matter what the end product it is. It is all about the actual act of expressing yourself. It is the act of
Right.
the creation itself that is the learning, the lesson, the experiment, the exploration. And I'm sure, not to put words in other people's mouths, but that even as an artist who obviously, I'm guessing wants an end product as well, it is still, if you are too, I know as a writer, if I am too focused on the end product, on what's this going to look like at the end, this is my model, my blueprint for the book, for the story. And if I'm too fixated on that, or particularly if I start thinking about how anyone else is going to respond to it, will anyone like it? Does anyone, is it worth anything at the end of the day to anyone other than me?
Mm.
Actually, it takes you completely out of the creative process because of everything that you're saying, because you are thinking about, is it going to be right or wrong? It's no longer an experiment or an exploration or a let's see what comes out or let's follow my heart or let's find the magic. It is all about the end product, and actually that blinkers you, that stops you from seeing all options, and it definitely, I think, stops you from trying anything new, or trying something that might not work this time, or definitely might not work as you expected it to. If you're too attached to the outcome,
Yes.
I think you sort of set yourself up and, almost for failure before you start. But actually, again, that goes directly in
Mm.
opposition to what we are taught to believe. Set your goals, set your outcomes, be very clear what you're trying to achieve, and then work out how to do it, how to get there in the most linear, direct way possible.
Right. Right.
As opposed to, I have an idea, I have an intention, I know what I want. And actually, even my process of expressing what I want, of clarifying what I want, of working out what shape and form what I want will take, that is a process in its own right. And from where I am here and now, how can I possibly describe the detail of where I want to be, because it's beyond my vision right now. You know, it is not part of my life perspective yet. So I'd rather have an idea and a direction to start in and see where it takes me, and the openness to explore along the way. And trust the magic.
I'm getting chills because like, you just dropped like so many pieces of nuggets of like wisdom on on people here that I'm just like, y'all are gonna have to rewatch this because there was like so much in what you were just saying. And I also want to say hi to Elliot who joined, who's a former colleague of mine, and also from corporate landia. And as you were talking, the word that came to mind is authenticity. Is how do we tap into the journey that feels good to us, that brings us joy, that may go against the grain of what's been indoctrinated into us. And that's been a huge part of my journey too, right? Which is, yeah, like when I left corporate and I had to like detach from whatever outcome I thought was going to happen as a result of that. Like I really didn't know, was I going to launch a business? Was I going to like get another position in another company in another role? I had no idea, but I felt like that journey was an exploration of how do I drop the expectations and tap into my own knowing for how to live my best life. And the links between, there's so many links right between the fear and uncertainty and the allowing and the surrendering, but we're only taught like this one way of doing it.
And honestly, I think it's a lifetime journey. I don't think you ever get it. I mean, again, it's that, even though to me, my whole commitment is to live my truth, to be authentic, to express my truth. And part of that truth is very often I have no clue who I am in that moment. I have no clue what my truth is. Part of that is recognizing that very often I do not live my truth. I am not the woman I want to be. I behave in ways that, I wish I hadn't done that, said that. Oh, I would, that wasn't what I meant to do. I react. I am a real living, breathing, perfectly imperfect woman. And I'm, even as I have been on my journey so far to step more fully into living my truth, I notice how often I still have an idea in my mind that one day I'm going to get there, that one day I'm going to be the perfect person living my truth perfectly and everything will slot into place and I will know all the answers. Even though to me that is the exact opposite of kind of what I am, what I believe, what I value, what I think to be true, I still fall back into that old way of thinking and feeling. And I think there is no perfect place to get to, but I believe, or I hope, that the more you practice living in your truth, the easier it becomes. And when we fall out of connection with ourselves, I think the quicker and easier it is to reconnect, to come back to ourselves, the reality is we do not live in isolation, and we are bombarded by noise and busyness and other people and demands and expectations and commitments and and blah. And I'd like to say it's impossible. I'm sure for some people it's not, but for me, it's impossible to stay centered and grounded and fully in myself and calm and peaceful with all of that coming at me. But I am learning how to stay more centered and grounded. I am learning how to be completely uncentered and grounded and wobble and fall and, and come back to myself. And I am learning when I need to step out of the world and create space for myself, step into the darkness, do a mini version of Inanna's journey, go into the underworld, into my own inner world, my own, and just be in silence, in solitude, and even things like meditation, I thoroughly believe in meditation. I think it's brilliant. I think it's powerful. When I am doing a regular meditation practice, there is no doubt in my mind I am calmer, I am closer to who I want to be. And when I lose my meditation practice, when life gets busy and I don't have time, I find it incredibly difficult to get back to that. But again, I think it is letting go of all these ideas of getting it right or getting it wrong, or pass or fail, or success or failure. And more just, again, we use so many terms as, life is a journey, it's not a destination. And again, I believe that. And yet, so often I still go into destination mode. I still go into, well, I've still got to be going somewhere, or surely at some point I'm going to get to this magical place. And it's just, it is all a practice. Like yoga, I think, it's not about getting anywhere or perfecting any skill. It is simply about, if anything, it's about learning to be more accepting about all the times we fail, get it wrong, are not the person we want to be, do not behave perfectly, and learning increasingly to be more okay with that and go, next time I'll do it better or differently, or that was fine how it was this time, in all its messiness kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And Shige is sharing that yoga meets you where you are.
And yoga is not about doing the pose right. It's about using the pose to connect more fully with, ooh, where is my body today? Ooh, how does that feel? Ooh, where am I right now? So exactly, it meets you where you are, and it also helps you to meet yourself more. And I think, to me, that's the exact, if we could live that, if we could notice more, just where we are. Oh, I did that really clumsily. Oh, I didn't do that the way, and that's okay. That's where I am today. I can almost feel a relief as I say that. It's like, wouldn't life be easier? Wouldn't it all just be easier if we could just be wherever we are at any given moment, rather than trying to be perfect, brilliant, better, different, other than we are.
Yeah, 100%. And everything that you're talking about, I don't know what's coming to mind, and with what you're saying, even in this moment, is especially this moment in time where so much is bubbling to the surface about Black Lives Matter, and all oppressed people, like all the people who are told it's not okay to be who you are, or like you aren't enough, or whatever, and how that translates into workplaces, right? Where it's like, ooh, how do you know who to be? Like, and because, right, we've got, there's concepts like code switching and what's acceptable and what's not. And we're in this moment in time, I think, where there is the reality that these institutions and these places, right, aren't where they need to be. That there's still these things in place, this toxicity, all of that, racism, and all of that. And at the same time, the world is encouraging us, I think, as we should, to be ourselves and to be more comfortable in our skin and let our magic shine, let our true self shine. And I think there's so much tension there can be so much tension between, well, if I honor this, will it work here? And then what do you do? And I think that can create a lot of stuckness, which I think brings it back to actually what we're working on together, which is the Rebel Magic workshop, about how do we live in a world in which there's so much progress to be made around, because like you said, we don't live in isolation, right? Like we operate in environments,
And
And
just to
yeah,
mention out a couple of things before you, that, because
yeah.
going back, to me, the biggest part of all of that is actually, I think we don't know. We don't know how to be ourselves. We don't know how
Mm,
to change these organizations. We don't know how to address systemic racism, sexism, homophobia, all these. We do not have those answers. And I think if we try to pretend that we do, that's the problem. That's the sticking point.
mm,
That is where we either have to sweep the whole thing under the carpet and pretend it's not happening because it is too much to deal with. It feels impossible and
mm,
overwhelming. Or again, we're in that territory of kind of coming up with platitudes and lip
mm,
service and
mm,
stock, off the shelf answers. And I think with all of those things that you have named, we are literally facing a turning point where we are going. The first step is we just simply have to acknowledge the fact that we do
mm,
not have a clue how to sort these out. But the first thing is to stop and recognize and acknowledge that they are major, major problems, that there is huge injustice in the world.
mm,
And it is not us and them. We are all part of that problem. And I think when it comes to organizations, to corporates, it is very easy even to make them the baddies, the them, the
mm,
what, the kind of, well, corporates are the problem, the system is the problem, but we are corporates, we are the system, we
mm,
are the people who created those systems, who perpetuated those systems, who are still perpetuating those systems, who are living and breathing and making them what they are. And
mm,
that's devastatingly depressing on one level to me. And also, it means that we also are the people who can choose to change them. And to me,
mm,
this is the thing about holding darkness and light. And
mm,
even, the idea of real magic. We are not talking about fairy tale magic. We are not talking about, happy ever afters and, oh, well, it's all okay and it all ends up okay and it works okay, because it does not work out okay for many, many people in this world. It is not okay
mm,
what is going on. But the real magic to me is where we can look that in the face and go, that is wrong, that is ugly, that is humans are cruel, humans are awful. And there is so many terrible things in the world, and I am going to stand up and fight against what is wrong in the world.
mm,
And I am also going to believe in the possibility of change, even though right now sometimes I look around and I think I cannot, it's like you said, even on a personal level, when you look at your life and what do you imagine, it's like I look at this world sometimes and I think I cannot even imagine a better world or how any
mm,
of these problems could be resolved or what that could look like. And again, in the territory of spiritual bypassing, to me, if I
mm,
am sitting there going, I imagine a perfect world where we're all happy and we're all living in love and we're all, it just doesn't resonate for me.
mm,
Yes, I'd love to believe in that. But I cannot
mm,
look at the world we are in today and believe that simply by putting energy and by
mm,
believing in it, that can come about. I think it takes both. It takes belief in possibility, that there can be change, that there can be something better and different that I cannot possibly even imagine right now because I am too little. I am one little person. I do not have the experience or vision to see
mm,
what that world could look like. And all I can do is address the little daily problems that I see, the little daily injustices, and start to work towards creating a better vision, a
mm,
better version of the world in openness without, I haven't, to me, half the problem is not to go straight back into us and them, but it's all those people who are sitting there going, they've got all the answers. Because maybe they do, maybe I'm wrong, but I cannot imagine that any
mm,
one of us has any of the answers. But
mm,
I think possibly collectively, all of us together do. And I know you and I have had
mm,
these conversations before about, true diversity, like you say, you know, in ourselves, honoring this part and that part, which often feel like they're in conflict, but also in the world. You know, again, one of our biggest problems is that we are mired in this idea of us and them. You know, it takes different shape and form, but there's always an us and a them somehow. And actually, we are all part of the problem, one way or another, and we are all part of the solution. And more than that, as in, I think we all have a role to play. I think, you know, the solution only comes when we start to listen to everyone's voices. You know, it is not just about the injustices that so many groups of people and individuals are facing. It is also about the fact that we have cut those stories out of the world story. So we're never going to find a solution without their views. I'm getting louder and more excited here, sorry. But
I love it. I mean, look, your passion right now is 100% why I'm just so freaking excited to do this program with you that we've created. And the realness, like I can't tell you how many chills that I've gotten just in listening to what you're saying, because, you know, I 100% agree that, like, you know, that there's got to be groundedness in how we're seeing possibility, how we're doing the work on ourselves, how we're doing the work of opening, right? Because I think right now there's a lot of closing. I think there's a lot of opening and there's a lot of closing. Right.
Because there's a lot of fear, because there is a lot of fear.
Right.
You know, and the reaction to fear often is to close down.
Yeah. And, you know, I'll just put it out there. I'll just, you know, in terms of the workshop that we're doing, the reason why I'm so excited about it is because we have identified and we know that what's most important in the journey of change, in the journey of, you know, finding work you love, which is kind of our focal area for the workshop, is disrupting your patterns, disrupting your belief system to open to open not just for like a minute, right? Because, like, we have to continuously open and allow possibility to come in, because I talk to so many people, right, who are stuck in that fear and scarcity mindset, and understandably.
Absolutely. That's what we have rammed down our throats all the time. It's terrifying.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it makes you not want to come out of the house. I didn't come out of the house for a long time.
Well, I don't know about in the UK, but, like, you know, here the toilet paper run was just like fascinating, but I don't know if that was the same. Yeah, same. All right, so same. You know,
but I think you said it. You know, you used the word grounding, and to me, those are the two parts of the story that have to be bridged. You know, we do have to open and start believing in possibility, start believing that we can do it differently, whether that is I can have work I love,
right,
or whether that is, you know, I can be a part of changing our world and making it a better place. On the personal and collective level, we have to have the openness to believing in possibility, and we have to ground it in reality. We have to start where we are, with all the muckiness and ugliness and all the things that are wrong, again, whether that's with our world, with our lives, with ourselves, however we are viewing it,
right.
You know, it almost makes no difference whether you start with the personal or the collective. To me, you know, it's kind of that the way we do one thing is the way we do everything.
Right.
So if we can take one very specific, tiny little thing, like how do I find work I love, which is not tiny and little and insignificant, you know, when it's what you are looking for and it is, you know, such a big part of our lives' work. Well, if I can explore and experiment and open to the possibility of new ways of doing this from a place of this is how I do things now. I'm not going to beat myself up over it. I am going to accept that I am not this perfect person. I am this real imperfect person. Then I think number one, it changes the way we do everything. You know, so I think it is all about moving from, well, like I keep saying, the kind of, here's the 7-step one-size-fits-all program and follow these steps and you will get love and money and success and everything your heart could desire, you know, into this. To, I don't believe there is a one-size-fits-all set way of doing things. I have never found one that works for me. I have found wisdom and insight from all sorts of different people. I have found a whole smorgasbord of tools and techniques that sometimes work for me. That on, like I talked about meditation, on one day it works for me, on another day it's the battle from hell for me. You know, to me, it is about, it's not about learning new stuff or reading, you know, well, for me, you know, I feel like I've read it and listened and I've done all the podcasts and the courses and I can't bear the thought of, you know, doing another one. What I want for me and for the people that I sort of touch is to create the space to explore who I am, what works for me, and to experiment, to create safe space to experiment with new ways of doing things until I find the way that works. You know, and that to me is the heart and soul of Rebel Magic, is what we are creating, and I hope you agree. I think you do from all our conversations. But it is creating space and ideas for ways to explore, for ways to connect with yourself, to connect with each other, to open up to new possibilities and different ways of doing things until we all find our own way, you know, again, which isn't a perfect way, which isn't like right, at the end of a week of exploration, I will have my new way and it will be perfect and it will work for me in every single situation going forward. I think it's about learning how to explore, learning how to let go of having to know the answers, of having to get it right. You know, it is about learning to be okay with that process of learning and exploration forever. But each time we do it, I think we become more grounded in, this is the way that works for me. This is my truth. This feels right for me. That I didn't like so much, or that I kind of like that bit, but not, you know, it's all about finding our own way. I think. What do you think?
Oh my God. I mean, yes, let me just bottle all of that up and like send it to the world, because I just, you know, I know this shit's going to resonate with people, because like, I know that like, I just keep coming back to this idea of like, you have to find your own way through the muck, and that, you know, Nicole, you have such this amazing skill to help people do that, because you've been through the muck yourself and you know there's no fucking magic bullet, pardon my French, you know? And I keep coming back to this, like, that the way we get through, the way we find the magic is holding the light in the dark, period. Because if we just ignore the darkness, we're missing out on so much, because like you said, like that's where the magic is.
And sometimes, can I just add to that? Sometimes it's actually about believing that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, even when you cannot see it. I think that's even bigger, because sometimes there is no light. You cannot see the light. You have to trust that dawn will come again, kind of thing, because that is the cycle of life, you know?
Well, and that's where the faith and the spirituality comes in, which is continuing to trust. And that's a whole other friggin', you know, talk about a Tuesday, because I know in the past 2 years of starting my own thing, I have to come back to the trust and back to the trust, because, you know, I lose my way all the time and I just have to keep finding the center. But I know, so we have 1 minute left. So I can't believe it. So hard. So number one, I just want to like recap for people that A, you're amazing. And of course they already see that. And B, that's why I'm working with her to create a Rebel Magic workshop, which starts in November. So you can DM her or me to find out more about that, or email me at breakthrough@toscadimateo.com. You also do your own Calling in the Magic program, and people can reach you through IG or through your email, right?
Yep.
At Nicole.
Nicole Cohen UK at hotmail.com.
Perfect. So we got 10 seconds left. I love you, girl. I'm so thrilled that you were here, and I can't wait to do this again.
Definitely. Love
All right, love
you.
you too. Thanks for everyone for joining.